laws, legislation, and regulation. Prior to joining ASA, Toby was Executive Director of the National Technical Services Association. He also served as Legislative Counsel for Rep. Jack Quinn, a Republican from New York, and he's received his law degree from Catholic University and holds a BA degree from Georgetown. And what it doesn't say here is Toby spends a lot of his time working with the subcommittees in Washington to try to get things moving in the right direction for our industry, not only on this particular issue, but all issues that are important to the staffing industry. So welcome to the two of these. And I think you drew a short straw, so you're going to go.
Sure.
You're going to go first. All right.
Thank you very much, John. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody too for joining today. Really appreciate it. Toby and I have a lot to cover, and we're going to kind of skim through some of these slides quickly because, quite honestly, there's too much to cover with health reform in one session. So we'll try to hit on some of the highlights today. We'll try to answer some of your questions at the end, and hopefully you'll leave here with a little bit more information than you came in with. But as we all know, the health reform law is a very fluid environment. Things are constantly being clarified, defined, and so forth. So we'll continue to keep you posted as we go forward. Some of the things, many of you have attended previous webinars from ASA and Essential StaffCARE in the past. So some of the things we're not going to go over today are up here. We may touch on a few of them, but if you want more information, we have some of our old webinars posted on eschealthcarereform.com, and you can replay them with audio. We also have a white paper there, although we're looking to release a new white paper because, again, things are changing quickly. Some of the things we're going to go over today, a little bit about pay or play look back, not too much. You guys know what that is, so just kind of a little snapshot. Current status of major medical. You know, what can we do about getting major medical for our temporary employees and new full-time temps? Some reality checks, basically, which are dispelling some myths that have been on the market out there. A little bit about minimum value, recent update on MEC, private exchanges versus public exchanges, and so forth. A little about who we are. For those of you, we have some customers in here and some that are not customers, so just so you know who we are. Largest provider of benefits in the industry. We're now up to over 500,000 temps a year enrolling in Essential StaffCARE's medical plan, which is really big. And we just launched it in 2004. And the reason it's been so successful is because we've got feedback from you guys, from staffing companies across the country. We realized that benefit plans for temps pretty much failed miserably in the past when we tried to offer standard off-the-shelf plans. So we customized Essential StaffCARE 100% for the staffing industry. We've invested millions of dollars with our partners at Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, PAI, BCS, to build an interface onto their systems, specifically for companies like you, to handle the comings and goings of temps. Inc. Magazine 500 fastest growing companies for the third time. That's really hard to do 3 times. Golden Eagle Award winner for the National Association of Health Underwriters for 2011 and 2012. That's another term for that is NAHU. National Association of Health Underwriters is the preeminent organization in the country for health insurance brokers, underwriters, consultants, and so forth. So the brokers, consultants get together and they have an industry association, much like the American Staffing Association. And we're the top award winners with them for demonstrating leadership in this area. I'm not going to go over this. You can get that later. We did put together a health reform task force, and we did it because it's such a complicated issue. So we've been trying to be an aggregator of information, get information from ASA, from the legal teams at the insurance companies, from our own ERISA attorney, from white papers, from consultants in the market, try to aggregate it all together and give some common sense answers to people out there with what is a very complicated issue. Our partner is one of only 2 A+ rated health insurance companies in the nation. So you think about that, of all the health insurance companies, there's only 2 of them that are A+ rated, and our partner's one. So they've been a very good partner, and they are legitimate. Pay or play in the look back rule, this is just kind of a little grid snapshot to clarify things for everyone. First of all, you want to find out if you're a large employer. You guys are going to be familiar with this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this stuff. Either you sponsor a health plan or you don't sponsor a health plan. Well, if you sponsor a health plan, does it provide adequate coverage or does it provide inadequate coverage? If it provides adequate coverage, then there's no penalty, but of course you have to pay for that health plan. If it provides inadequate coverage, then you have a monthly penalty of the $3,000 because that plan is not providing minimum value, or if it's not affordable and so forth. So $3,000 is broken down on a monthly basis, and that's paid for the full-time employees that have a subsidy. If you do not sponsor a health plan, period, end of story, then it's the $2,000 penalty, which breaks that down into $166 a month, because it's calculated monthly. And that's for all your full-time employees, minus the first 30 free. So the smaller staffing companies that are just, over that, say you have 100 full-time employees between your internal staff and your temps that are deemed full-time using the look-back rule. Well, out of 100, if you get 30 free, you're only taxed on the 70 difference. So a little bit different. It's a little bit more of an advantage than if you had 5,000 employees that are full-time and you get 30 free. So these kind of things come into play. The look-back rule, we have to give huge credit to American Staffing Association and Ed Lenz. From what I'm told, ASA got together with two very large associations, the Retail Association and the Restaurant Association. They represented about 30 million people. ASA in staffing represented about 3 million people. But guess who came up with the idea of pursuing a look-back strategy? It was Ed Lenz and ASA, and it's going to save American businesses a lot of money, because instead of getting fined on all of your full-time employees working 30 hours a week, for a month, now you can use a look-back to determine, well, did they average 30 hours a week for the last 12 months? So the threshold is 1,560 hours. And you can do sample analysis of your system right now, run a report, see who's hit the 1,560 hour mark, and they're still on your payroll, still working today, and that would be deemed a full-time employee. It's a lot less. And if you look at the chart, from all the staffing companies we talked to, the average is, it used to be about 90% of your temps would have been full-time employees. Now it's only about 10% of your temps. So most of the staffing companies that I talk with, once they run these calculations, if they have 500 temps out on payroll, maybe about 50 of them hit this mark. But it varies. It varies company to company. Some of you may have longer-term temps and so forth. You definitely want to be running that report now to see, kind of gauge where you're going to come in if you haven't yet. However, all the pieces of the puzzle are important. This is a typical staffing company. They have 450 temps. 50 of them are full-time temps using this rule. And then maybe you have 25 internal folks within your corporate structure. So all those pieces of the puzzle are still important. You don't want to just focus on your internals or your full-times. You still have a whole temporary population that you need to offer benefits to attract and retain, keep them healthy and productive, and so forth. We put together some graphs on the look-back rule. You can look at these later, but it gives you a little bit of a visual. You have the measurement period, which is the period looking back where you're doing your measurement if they hit the 1,560 hours. Then you have an administrative period, which is a period of time that the government gives employers to run these reports and implement your plan of action. Well, if I'm going to offer a plan, I need time to do it. So you have an administrative period. And then you have the stability period, which is, all right, we've run a report in our measurement period and showed that 50 of our temps are full-time employees per the rule. Well, we have to have them frozen as of going forward for the next duration within that stability period. Typically 12 months going forward they would have to be deemed a full-time employee, regardless of how little they worked. And we're hoping to get clarification on that as well. But it's a little bit different for a new hire versus an ongoing employee. Ongoing employees, you get a little bit longer of the red, which is the administrative period, the time for you as an employer to implement your plan of action. Ongoing employees are the people that are currently on your payroll. So you're doing a report on them, you need time to put together a plan and implement it. So you have a little bit more time, typically about 3 months. For a new hire, that's on each individual person, you'll have about 30 days. I think it's first of the month following 30 days. But you have a shorter admin period, so I won't spend a lot of time on that. What I do want to help educate everyone on is how our discussions are going with the health insurance companies. I work with Insurance Applications Group. We're an insurance brokerage / consulting firm that got fed up with products not working for the staffing industry. So we decided to invest about half of our commissions and all of our time and talent and effort into building Essential StaffCARE with an insurance partner. Say, forget about it. We've tried all your off-the-shelf products. They haven't worked. They can't handle the coming and goings of temps. So we're going to help build this using feedback from folks like you. And with that, we were able to build up a big pool of temps that we can use to negotiate. Now we have over 500,000 temps signed up in the program, and we use that to negotiate with the underwriters at Blue Cross and so forth. But we can also use that to negotiate with other insurance companies, because we're still an insurance broker technically. And I used to work at Aetna. I know some folks there. I used to work with Major Medical in the background, doing HMOs, PPOs, rolling out plans like that in Jacksonville, Florida. Self-funded plans, I used to do that as well. So we're very familiar with the fundamentals of group health insurance. And we're also very in tune to the fact that staffing companies want to be able to play. They want to be able to offer full-blown health insurance to their temps if they can. And unfortunately, we're still stuck with a dilemma. And I'll tell a little bit more about that in a moment. The insurance companies they rate their health plans, or group health plans, using math. If everyone in this room was part of a company, and I was the owner of the company, we're all employees here, I would have to submit a census of all you to an insurance company. They would look at all of our age, break up where we live, the cost factor of the zip codes, all that stuff. They would want to make sure that you guys worked here an average of 3 years or longer. Tenure is big for an insurance company, because then they can gauge who is within the group that they have to insure. With temps, it's different. You know, even though we've done a look-back rule, the temps might be all gone in 6 months or a year. So the insurance company underwriter doesn't know how to price the risk that's coming in there. And this whole room that the insurance company's underwriting could be different next year or even in 6 months. So they don't know what kind of risk, and it's real risk. I mean, they literally are the bank account to unlimited claims liability for every man, woman, and child covered under the plan. Because with health reform, there are no caps there are no caps or limits allowed on health plans anymore. So this is the issue that we're trying to negotiate with these insurance companies to bring a play solution. And they're saying, well, wait a minute. You know, just because the government says, you know, we're doing health reform doesn't mean that they're forcing us to underwrite populations that we're going to lose a lot of money on. And there's some gray area as to how this is going to develop in the future. But right now, the head underwriters are saying, thanks, but no thanks. We're already we're under severe pressures with health reform, with all the new things that have been added. And with the small group market and the individual market on the state exchange side, they're limited to 3% profit now. So their profit's been cut. They've had to cut out broker commissions across the board, large and small group, to help due to the price fixing rules by the government and so forth. So they're under a lot of pressure. The last thing they want to do is dive into providing uncapped health insurance for temps that they don't know how to price it. And unfortunately, that's what we've been stuck with. Although we might have some recent developments we'll talk about later. This bullet here, the third to last one, for each $250,000 claim that comes into a health plan, the insurance company literally needs hundreds of other employees paying into the plan without a single claim, just to cover it. So it's a real balancing act for the insurance companies. Plus, the catastrophic claims have literally doubled just recently, from 2005 to 2010. Picture that. What used to be a $1 million claim for a premature baby that they had to keep alive and so forth is now a $2 million claim. What used to be a $2 million claim is now a $4 million claim. Liver kidney transplants are up 90% at an average cost of $760,000. So it's real money, and the insurance companies are like, they're stuck in this as well because the law tells them they have to cover stuff. There's a lot of state mandates and stuff that they have to cover. Now the government tells them they have to have coverage forever, unlimited. They can't have $1 million max. So the insurance companies are scrambling to try to figure all this out. And it's kind of new to them as well, these no caps and how to price that in. But it's significant when you hear that catastrophic claims have doubled just in a 5-year period. That's the source of that's a managed care magazine that does this for a living. So what we try to do is look at a claims stratification for the employees with our partners over at Blue Cross of South Carolina. And their division PAI, Planned Administrators, that administers Essential StaffCARE. They do all the self-funded plans for Blue Cross, and they have a lot of large employers that they do self-funding for. So they have a lot of a big population to do. Basically all the self-funding in South Carolina. And we said, well, what if we had a low enrollment? What if we just offered a plan to these temps, but nobody really enrolls, so it doesn't cost us a lot? Because you've heard that on the market. I'll just offer something, no one's going to enroll anyway. For me, red flag goes up. You know, how do you offer a group health plan with nobody enrolling? You're going to get the sickest ones to enroll, it's going to blow up, and someone's going to lose a lot of money. It's going to be an insurance company, so they're not going to want to touch it. Well, if you look at this, if you offered a health plan with just 10% enrollment rate, the average claims per employee is $168,000. So that's why the underwriters say, no, we can't do this right now. And that's why we're stuck in such a bind right now. We're trying to get full-blown uncapped major med for minimum value type coverage even. So the point here is, don't make your decisions based on sample health insurance costs, because samples don't matter. What matters is, did you get a real quote issued? Does the underwriter who gave you a quote know what they're talking about? Or did an insurance broker who just lost his commissions due to health reform, is he trying to squeak this through? There needs to be full disclosure, because the last thing you want to do is get sold something from an insurance broker, roll it out, and then all of a sudden when the enrollment forms get sent into the carrier, they're going to count up the enrollment forms, they're going to measure up the average age, gender, and so forth, see how it compared to the census. If there's a difference of more than 10%, they're going to re-rate your group. But more importantly, if you don't get 75% or minimum participation, your policy's not issued. So you just went through open enrollment, you communicated to all your employees, all your customers, that yes, we're doing this because a broker promised you that you could get it done, and then the underwriter actually looks at this stuff and says, whoa, wait a minute, you only had a small chunk of your temps sign up, no policy issued, you got to basically undo it. So these are the issues that you have to be careful of. There are a couple things in the small group market in the exchanges, and Toby might talk about this a little bit later. There was an affordability provision and availability provision. And I was wondering if these were ever going to bubble up upstream. Basically, it ties the insurance company's hands where they have to offer coverage to people that they used to decline, or to groups that they used to decline. So typically on an underwriter decline list would be offshore fishing companies, deep sea fishing, mining, sometimes PEOs, temps in the staffing industry, stuff like that. They just, due to the high turnover, the fact that they can't price it, they say it's a decline market. Aetna just came out with their sales guide, and Humana and others, and Aetna told me that they are not covering the temps in the staffing industry, they're just doing the internals. They don't want to put it in writing. I think it was Humana that actually put it in writing right in their sales guide. The carriers, they still haven't come to the point where they can figure out how to price the temps, let's put it that way, for uncapped health insurance. Now, will these provisions, availability and affordability, the affordability issue, by the way, is a 3-to-1 spread. So if somebody goes to the exchange and, say you have an employee, they go down to the estate exchange to get their own coverage. An old person cannot be charged more than 3 times a young person. So what does that mean? It means the young person's rates are going to go up as part of this health reform initiative. So the problem that poses is that health reform is dependent on these young, healthy people signing up for coverage who don't have a lot of claims to offset the sick people who are immediately going to gravitate into the exchanges. So in my mind, this is kind of set up to fail. Plus, when we talk about the subsidies in a minute, you'll see how people may do a little window shopping, but they might not actually buy a plan in all instances due to the affordability issue. To put it in perspective, health costs, President Obama, he said that the health premiums would drop $2,500 for the typical family by the end of his first term when he was proposing this. What has happened? Premiums have increased by $3,065. So he's saying, do health reform is going to drop by $2,500 by the end of his first term. They've gone up $3,000. Huge discrepancy. Where's the mark? CEO of Aetna warns that many customers or consumers would face premium rate shock. So we need to be prepared for how these state exchanges bubble up, or the federal exchanges that backstop it. What are the prices going to be for the plans in there? Are they going to start out good in year 1? Because people are going to be guessing, the insurance companies are going to be kind of guessing what they think will enroll. Year 2, year 3, what if they don't get those young healthies to enroll? You could have a big rate increase year 2, year 3. You could see these state exchanges having significant rate increases, and then maybe a few years in, the government steps in and says, see, we gave you a shot. you failed. It's time for us to have a single payer solution. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but that could easily happen. I talked to the assistant insurance commissioner in Florida, for the state of Florida, and I was posing these concerns about adverse selection, and the sick people joining and the healthy ones waving off, and you're not going to get the right mix. And they said, and about this happening, a couple of years of rate increases at the exchanges and the government coming in and saying we gave you a shot in private industry, and it didn't work. Well, it didn't work because their hands are tied with how it's structured from a price and benefit standpoint. And she said, yeah, a lot of people agree exactly with what you're saying. This is another example of how they projected health costs. The state high-risk pools were running at about $12,400 per person. So if you couldn't get coverage, you were in a state high-risk pool. Each state, some of them had it, some of them don't, or they were turned on somewhere. But $12,400 was the average cost. So the government's top actuaries got together and as part of this health reform measure, came out with a pre-existing plan. So before 2014 comes in, over the last couple of years, if you have a health condition, the exchanges aren't open yet, we have a pre-existing plan, government-sponsored, you can sign up for. Top actuaries, you think they'd be pretty good at estimating what it would cost? They said, it's going to be about $13,000 per person. You may have heard in the news recently, the 2011, they projected that for 2010. A year later, instead of $13,000, it was $28,000 per person. So their top actuaries were literally 100% wrong. And we see this time and time again with group health, with health insurance. The exposure and the risk is very big. So the people don't always estimate properly. And recently they had just announced that they turned off funding and they had to stop enrollments for these pre-existing plans. It was a big issue. Then Congress was getting together to see if they could vote in an extension and try to find more funding for it. This is just a little microcosm of what could happen nationally. These are the proportions of medical costs that are covered by the employer, the dark blue, the employee out of pocket in the light blue, and then the employee contribution toward their premium in the yellow. It's from Milliman. You can see the employer is funding a lot of the cost of this. The problem is employees are frustrated. Even people like us, you've got a health plan that your employer's paying a good chunk of, but deductibles have gone through the roof. Deductibles have gone from like $200 or $300 10 years ago to like $1,200 today. They're really spiking up. So when people use their plan, they're just not even happy with it anyway. So employers are frustrated. CFOs are frustrated. They're going broke trying to provide this coverage, and the people don't even like what they're providing, and they might see health reform as an out. Some of them might see it as an out in the future. And we'll talk about it under the trends area later. Cost of health insurance, some more information. All industries, typically it's about $2.21 an hour, or 7.7% of compensation. For the service industry, which are lower wage, typically employees and so forth, it's $1.37 an hour is the average cost of health insurance, or 8.2% of earnings. And that does not include declined groups, which are staffing companies, temps. Those could have, if they did give us a rate, probably going to rate it up even higher. So we're facing a lot of issues here. We talked about how it's hard to budget for these claims, especially in a fluid environment. However, insurance companies are now forced to cover one in the state exchanges. There's lots of different plans and carriers that will be there. You have to think about how this could migrate over time. Everybody has to work for a company to get health insurance today, pretty much. A lot of people do get, some people do get individual policies, but they're usually the healthy ones. If you're sick and you apply for an individual policy, they say thanks but no thanks. So everyone's bound, I've got to keep my job to keep my health insurance. I've got to keep my job to cover my kids. That fundamentally changes in less than a year, January 1. People can go down to an exchange, say thanks but no thanks, employer. Your one plan might be good for some of you, but I got different carriers, bronze, silver, gold, platinum plan to choose from different carriers and all that, and maybe a subsidy. So literally, this could fundamentally change the employer-employee relationship when it comes down to health insurance and that being a driver. However, there are a lot of caveats to that. Number one being, what's the cost of the plan going to be at the exchange? Employer plan might actually become a good place to hold on to, because your plan is priced the way the insurance companies know how to price it, using traditional math. These exchanges, traditional math is thrown out the window. It's a hope and a prayer that it's going to work right. Carriers are just kind of wing it, and we've talked about how when they've used their best actuaries in the past, how that's turned out. So if these exchanges, if the prices go up real fast, what starts out as a good thing, employees might come back to you and say, I want on your employer plan because those things are blowing up. These are all things to think about. Employees will make their choice based on cost. We all know cost is a critical factor. One of the myths out there is that you may have heard this. Well, everyone up to 400% of federal poverty level is going to get free coverage. They're going to get subsidies and government coverage. No, not really at all. It will all come down to affordability. But when we've looked at the subsidy level from the government versus the cost of the health plan, the subsidies dry up real fast after 150% of federal poverty level. So, and that's like, I think, $16,000 or so. And I'll show you a chart of that in a moment. Here you look at the percent of federal poverty level on the far left, what that earnings equivalent is. You see 150% is about $16,000 a year. What the penalty is, it's 1% of earnings or $95. I left out the $95, just use the 1% of earnings because that's higher. So the penalty for an employee, or for anyone not getting health insurance in 2014 is $168 at the 150% level. And you can see how that goes up to $447 at 400% of poverty level. But compare that to the cost of the plan. And then you can see that on the far right, the government subsidy. So that red category is the employee decision-making category. What's my fine if I don't buy something? Because it's an individual mandate, they're telling me I gotta buy it. Well, what's the penalty if I don't? It's $168 to $447. What's the cost of the plan? $627 to almost $4,000. So pick someone in the middle, 300% of federal poverty level, make it about $33,000 a year, typical employee. What employee making $33,000 a year has an extra $3,000 in their pocket to go buy a plan? Now these numbers may change, but these numbers are provided by the Kaiser Family Foundation Health Subsidy Calculator. They've analyzed what the subsidies are, they've analyzed what the projected costs of the plan are, and this is before Aetna and everyone has come out and saying, well, these plan costs are actually going to be higher because of all the issues we're talking about. So it's all going to come down to affordability. We'll see what happens, but just know that there's a good chance you'll have a lot of temps that go down to the exchange, do a little window shopping, and realize I can't afford a couple $100 a month for that. Thanks, but I'll wait until I get sick, later and maybe sign up later. And guess what? There's nothing to stop them from doing that. Under health reform, they can sign up later when they're sick. There may be an annual open enrollment period like Medicare, but they can't be denied. I'm going to skip through this. We've talked about major med carriers and their requirements for 75% minimum participation is the rule. We've all heard that, that's changing or that's old or whatever. I'll believe it when I see it. I'm talking to the underwriters and they're still writing groups the way using traditional math. So, if I see a real proposal from an Aetna, Blue Cross, United, whoever, saying, no, you don't have any participation minimum, you can just offer unlimited health insurance, then I'll believe it when I see it. But right now, they're all using their same methodologies. This is another thing to be careful of. There are 435,000 group health insurance agents in the country. So you've got a lot of people. Picture all like real estate agents or whatever. They make their commissions off of selling a product, right? Well, the government has just redefined how the insurance companies can price their program, and they trimmed it up. So the insurance companies had to cut out the brokers. So starting over the last couple of years, insurance companies have cut brokers out of commissions or converted it into fees and said, well, we'll turn your commission into a fee and we'll show it on the side to the group. And the brokers are now competing on their commissions, which means it's going down, down, down. They can't necessarily, it's not just a flat 5% built into the rate or whatever. The problem with that is that it's creating a feeding frenzy. Brokers that are used to living a lifestyle of this and paying their rent, I'm talking the biggest consulting firms down to the bottom, are now having erosion on their commissions income for group health due to health reform. So they're trying to come up with new things to sell you. So be very careful with what you hear and get a second opinion from someone you trust, that they're not just selling you something that could be very high risk, that could blow up on you, leave claims liability for yourself and so forth. The fundamentals still apply. Minimum participation, good spread of risk and all that. If someone says they have the secret answer, just be careful with it and make sure you investigate it very carefully. So far, we've had a lot of empty promises with MEC. We've had a lot of people say, oh, I've got the MEC solution, minimum essential coverage, for 2 or 3 years now. And every time it hasn't panned out to an actual offer from a company. That might be changing in the near future, but just know that it's been 100% strikeout rate to this point. So there are a lot of people selling a lot of different things. We want to make darn sure that it's accurate and right before we move ahead with it. Let me skip through this. I'm going to show you a graph here. Oh, here are some things to be careful of. Offshore, this is one of the things that sprouted up. We'll just take your health insurance, we'll take all your staffing companies, put you in an offshore captive, which offshore captives, there's nothing wrong with them. They work great for workers' comp and in the right model, where you can apply safety programs, you can have good participants. Health insurance, you don't see offshore captives with health insurance, especially or when it comes to high turnover employees, temporary employees. If you have a group of employees that the insurance companies are saying, no, don't want to underwrite it, bad risk, don't know how to price it, people churning too fast, we could get hit with a $1 million claim. And if the insurance companies don't want to touch with a 10-foot pole, just taking all those people, putting them in an offshore captive, and having you guys pre-fund that captive with your own money doesn't turn it into good risk. So if you ever want to talk about that, feel free to call me anytime. We're talking about major med and putting the risk amongst yourself and you guys paying your claims and so forth, maybe getting stop loss. We did a survey of the market for stop loss carriers. Well, if you can't get a fully insured quote, maybe we can do a self-funded. And all the stop loss, we surveyed 30 stop loss carriers, and they all said, no, we're not going to provide stop loss for these populations for the same reason. They would be providing the coverage for those big dollar claims on people that they don't know who's going to enroll, and they're not going to get 75% participation, and all the issues we talked about. Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, I came in late. Did you want us to hold our questions until you're finished, or?
Yeah, I'm almost done. We might as well.
I'm sorry. You have it.
Minimum value, you guys are familiar with that. It's a concept that if you offer a plan and it provides minimum value, which basically covers 60% of the average person's healthcare costs, then that person is not eligible for a subsidy if they go to the exchange. Well, you got it through your employer, and your employer's plan is providing minimum value. You can't get a subsidy at the exchange. So it allows the employer to offer a plan so if they offer it to their employees, they won't get hit with subsidies. If an employee goes and gets a subsidy, whether it's due to minimum value or due to the plan being not affordable for that employee, and they're able to get a subsidy, government subsidy through the state exchange, then the employer can be hit with that $3,000 fine, which is monthly, about $250. They came out with a calculator. There's a link here if you want to plug in your plan and see if it meets minimum value. You can actually plug it in. I tried to get it down to the minimum. What's the basic plan we can do that hits minimum value? $5,000 deductible, 50% coinsurance, $6,500 out-of-pocket maximum. That had about 60% minimum value, right at that mark. The problem is, who's going to sign up for that? Are you really going to get 75% of your employees to sign up for a plan like that? I don't think so. And would an insurance company back it up for a population and all that? So we're still facing these issues. Recent update is minimum essential coverage is separated from minimum value. So up till recently, it's been standard, general accepted opinion that minimum essential coverage would be a regular health plan, full-blown health plan, major med. They talk about, you got to offer an MEC, minimum essential coverage. The way it panned out in Massachusetts was they had minimum credible coverage, very similar concept, and when they defined it, it was basically a major med plan. Well, there's a little bit of a tax loophole it appears might be developing where the minimum essential coverage is really just offered, or is really just a concept designed to state whether that employer gets fined under 4980H, A&B, the $3,000 fine. Exactly. So if you have minimum essential coverage plan separated from minimum value, now the big buzz is, well, can we get a minimum essential coverage plan? And that's defined, really loosely, an employer-sponsored health plan. Well, if you look, what does that mean? You go over to ERISA, and it could be, it's really general. It doesn't say specifically what needs to be covered. It could be a wellness or a preventive plan. So there's this little bit of a loophole that might be developing that we're trying to see, can we pursue that to have an employer offer a preventive wellness plan and have it be MEC? sounds crazy because everyone, of the top consulting firms down for the last couple of years talked about MEC being full-blown major med plan. Toby might talk more about this in a moment, but we're seeing how that pans out now. We've gotten clarification from Treasury and IRS that, yeah, they are separate, MEC and minimum value. We're still waiting to hear from HHS. There's a chance they could come back and say, no. MEC means full-blown health insurance. So we're panning that out, but that could develop now and create a huge opportunity for staffing companies to minimize that $2,000 fine. If you're offering an MEC plan, it's a wellness preventive plan, you could not be hit with a $2,000 fine for all of your temps, all your full-time employees. Just a $3,000 fine for those that go to get a subsidy, government subsidy. So we'll see how that develops. There's more information in here on that. And you're starting to see carriers develop these plans right now. Essential StaffCARE, we're developing it. I mean, it's easy. It's a preventive wellness plan. But our big thing is we don't want to steer anybody down a rabbit hole that ends up getting us in trouble later. We want to make sure, darn sure, because this is a radical change. If you can offer a wellness plan and get away from your fines, great. But let's not do it and have HHS come back later and say, whoa, you guys are all in trouble. We're going to, cause a ruckus. So we expect that to develop over the next 60 days and get some more clarity on that. But it's a great opportunity if it pans out. Essential StaffCARE, you may have heard that we're having an exchange. We've got such a large volume of temps that we use that as leverage with the insurance companies. So we're launching an exchange with different benefits. We're kind of modifying the benefits depending on what employee category we're looking at. So the top is MEC, minimum essential coverage. That might be a preventive wellness plan, or it might be a self-funded major med plan if we can get a carrier to underwrite it. It's all going to be group specific. We talked about the issues surrounding that. We also have for the light blue category, that's our standard essential StaffCARE program. It's going to continue 2014 and beyond. It's an indemnity plan, so it's accepted benefit. It's exempt from the health reform laws. So that'll be for your part-time temps with no coverage. So again, if you have 90% of your workforce are still part-time temps, you still need to provide some coverage to them. And a lot of them are not going to go down to the exchange and buy a plan for $3,000 or whatever it costs. You still want to provide coverage. So that's our standard program, the light blue. And that's medical, dental, life, disability, and vision, and prescription. So it's a suite of products, not just medical, but it's dental and other stuff that people need. Then you'll have part-time temps who purchase a state exchange plan. You'll have your employees, some of your temps may go down to the state exchange and actually get a plan where they come back to work for you, and we can offer maybe an exchange supplement plan. Because a lot of the temps, if they buy a plan, they're going to buy the least expensive plan at the exchange, the bronze plan. It's going to have a couple $1,000 deductible and low coinsurance. So as an employer, you have a little benefit to supplement that offered through your company. That's just another component. And then the final component might be a Medicaid type of a supplement, where Medicaid is expanding in certain states. So you may have more people covered under Medicaid. But Medicaid doesn't always cover dental, life, disability, vision, all that other stuff. So we can have kind of an employer-sponsored program for that. So we're modifying Essential StaffCARE to keep up with health reform and giving employers, staffing companies, the tools to offer attractive employee benefits for those different segments of groups. It's all done on a single file feed solution. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but Essential StaffCARE does a payroll report, and that allows us to see who's working, who's not, who had a deduction, who didn't, reconcile everything according to your payroll, weekly payroll. Everything's self-reconciled. Single invoice for everything. Then you have state exchanges versus public exchanges, or private exchanges. We've talked a little bit about this. Just know that the word exchange has been bantered around a lot. Essential StaffCARE's come out with a private exchange. It's really just a marketplace with products right now through a single carrier. There's a difference between a single carrier exchange and a multi-carrier exchange. Single carrier exchange can manage all that risk under one hat. So we can figure out, all right, if the temp doesn't sign up for A, but they sign up for B, and we can offset it, it's all priced, we think, priced more properly. Then you have a multi-carrier exchange, which is kind of like a website, and they put a whole bunch of insurance companies on there and say, have at it and pick your plan. Those are expected to have a lot of pressure. Probably the less known insurance companies might sign up for it because they need to compete. But adverse selection can happen and they could pop pretty quick. If all the sick people gravitate to one insurance company and they don't have any way to offset it and get those healthy ones. So multi-carrier exchanges have yet to be, see how those will work out. Here's a map of the exchanges that are likely in 2014. The gray are the federally facilitated exchanges, anticipated that the feds will do a backstop exchange for the gray states. The blue states are a state exchange, where the states are likely to do their own state-based exchange. And then the green are partnership, state and federal. Here's a map of Medicaid expansion. This shows, as of March 27th, where Medicaid should be expanding. The states not participating, there's 15 states who are not participating in Medicaid expansion. Leaning towards not are also in that category, the light red. And then participating in the expansion is dark blue, and then leaning towards participating light blue. So this, you can look at it offline, but it kind of shows where your state comes in and so forth. New decision landscape, this is how I'll pretty much sum everything up. That I touched on this earlier. Employers are going to be faced with a new decision landscape very, very soon. If you offer full-blown uncapped health insurance, and we can find a health insurance company to do it and offer it to your temps and whatever, great. Just know that you'll have to build that in as a cost. Know that it's going to be a new market and untested. Rates, health insurance rates have doubled in the last 9 years, and they're about to double again. With health reform, it's done nothing to contain costs. It's done everything to just expand coverage, which is more cost. So you have to, if you grab that tiger by the tail, just be prepared for it. And the issue is that some employers are going to start to peel off. They're going to say, all right, it's been health insurance, the cost of health insurance has been one of the top 3 concerns for CFOs in the country year after year after year. So some of those CFOs or presidents are going to finally say, hey, we can get out guilt-free. We're going to tap out, drop our health plan, everybody can go to the exchange, and I don't have to feel guilty because I'm not putting anybody out for who has a major issue. They can go over there and they're arms wide open. Go to the exchange and get your coverage. Maybe I'll subsidize you and what have you. So as employers do that, they're going to have a different pricing model to not cover or whatever it is. You just have to be careful if that trend takes off. If more and more employers, 2014, 15, 16, start bowing out, you have to keep an eye on what their cost structure and how their cost structure will be affected by that versus your own. Even the business executives, the owners of the company, can go to the exchange and get a platinum plan, and they're not going to be held to any discrimination issues. They can buy the most expensive plan there, and they'll even be covered. So there could be a trend to shift these catastrophic expenses over to the state, over to the government, over to these exchanges. The companies are sick of trying to budget for them. They're sick of getting huge rate increases, and a certain portion of them are just going to tap out and say, go to the exchange and get your catastrophic coverage, and you don't even like what we offer right now. Now, that's not going to happen everywhere, but if you look at it, some of the studies back it up. Now, these studies are changing and shifting, but Mercer, big known company, a study showed that 1 in 5 employers will drop their health plan post-2014. McKinsey showed that up to 30% of employers will drop their coverage post-2014. Others show it's less, 1 in 10. We don't know, but it's something to keep an eye on. I'm going to skip over the auto enrollment rule, non-discrimination. Those are kind of pending and pushed off. There was a big development on indemnity plans. For those of you that offer an indemnity plan to your temps, whether it's Essential StaffCARE or another, there are new regulations that came out kind of out of the blue that they can't offer benefits on a per procedure basis. It has to be per period. So instead of paying X amount per surgery, some of these plans use surgical schedules. Those are now wiped off. Essential StaffCARE is okay, we don't use a surgical schedule, but other plans are kind of reeling if they don't have the product flexibility. And that's about it. And just in summary, a lot of employers are expecting to hire temps to help them get through this wave. And these are just some quotes. It's going to force franchisees to shift workers to part-time to avoid the 50 threshold. We'll look at hiring more closely and could increase temps as opposed to full-time personnel. And the quotes go on and on. You all see it in the headlines. So I think it does pose an opportunity for staffing companies to help your customers through this wave. But there's a lot to to figure out between now and then. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So now comes the really down depressing part of the presentation. I'm just gonna throw that up right up front. While we're setting up, 30 minutes, okay. Yeah, that's fine. So Aaron, did a great job, and I'm gonna try to touch on a couple things and maybe go back a little bit to the basics to kind of make sure that everybody